Hi, so we're between you and lunch, so we need to make this interesting, huh? What I'd like to open with is a question for you. What words come to mind when you think of kind of big FMCG companies like Unilever, Procter & Gamble, Nestle, Mondelez? Anything? What kind of words come to mind? Sorry? No control. Right. Oh, I see, yeah. So no control over consumers, yeah. Sorry? Large number of brands, yeah. Global. Supermarket, yeah. Advertising, absolutely. Okay. So you've been very polite, actually. There's a lot of good things about these companies. Big brands, big marketing, sustained success over a number of years. But there's a few things you probably didn't say there. You didn't say agile, you didn't say leading edge, you didn't say really kind of responsive. We tend to be kind of quite big, slow-moving companies. But I think there's a role for Insight and the research community to kind of do something about this. So I think the traditional methods that we use and we rely on heavily have kind of become a little bit outdated, and we're kind of in this transition phase where we're still kind of clinging onto the past, but just kind of stepping into the future as well. Now, why is that important? It's a bit of a cliche, but everything is getting quicker. So I literally do not go through a day without hearing about a project that has to be fast-tracked, accelerated, max, crash timings. All of these things I hear every day. And if that's my reality, it certainly becomes the agency reality pretty quickly as well. I heard recently about an e-commerce project which from brief to debrief took 9 months. And the business partner obviously was pretty furious about that and said, look, the world's changed in that 9 months, but the research methods that you've chosen have taken that long to deliver. I think also kind of how we deal with our, the people who buy our brands has changed. It's certainly gone from marketing at people to more about kind of serving people. And I use the example of a Spanish retailer called Mercadona, who don't talk about the people that come in their stores as shoppers or customers. They just refer to the boss. So when the board apparently they have a converted coach that goes around Spain, and they have their board meetings on this bus. And they stop at the supermarket, but they park next door because for them, every parking space is reserved. It's reserved for the boss. And they go inside, and people in the stores are kind of pulled aside and said, would you like to come and try this? So they come and try a new product or something that's maybe not doing particularly well. And very quickly they make ranging decisions and innovation decisions based on immediate feedback. And so the pace of change and the way that we approach things today just isn't in line with the way that certainly our customers are thinking about things like that. But I would say the problem's not new. Every research project you or I has ever been involved in is always a balance between time and money and quality. But what we've seen is kind of quality, the definition of quality has changed over time. I've talked about speed, and you'll be very aware about budgets over the years that certainly since the recession, every company has looked to indirects as a means of kind of saving money. So we're looking for things quicker, cheaper, but more in a more engaging way. So we're going to talk about a couple of things that have worked pretty well for Unilever and in recent years. I guess one thing that hasn't changed is that our business partners internally still want two things. They still want direction and greater understanding of the issue. But how we do that has probably changed. So one of the things that we've done is an approach that we've called one question, one answer. Because whilst we're interested in methodology and sample and approach and all those kind of things, our business partners just aren't. And in the past, we've gone to them with 5 different things and said, right, you pick up the pieces and work out what all of this means. So we've tried to kind of take this approach with all of our agency partners to say, look, we don't care where the information is coming from. We want you to work together and come to us with one story. And then the other thing that we've talked about really, and I guess that first thing kind of helps with the simplicity and kind of making things really, really clear for marketeers. The other thing that's worked really well for us is our online community in the UK, which has been led by Join the Dots. And I guess that's given us the ability to kind of be more agile in how we've approached stuff. So even this kind of big lumbering giants like Unilever can still move quickly in certain places. I guess the challenge for us has been really how do we make this kind of an everyday reality, not just kind of an isolated set piece. So we're still trying to work out ways of how to do this more consistently. But I'm going to hand over to Aimee, who's going to talk to you a bit more about our online community and how that's worked.
Thanks, Alex. Okay, right, so how do online insight communities meet this need for a more joined up, forward-looking approach to research? Well, as Alex has mentioned already, the pace of change in Unilever's world is absolutely relentless. Consumers' worlds are growing more complicated by the day. Technological advances are changing what's ultimately possible, and the competitive landscape is constantly shifting. But at the same time, Unilever need to make sense of it all, and they need a clear picture of where to go next. So research projects that can take a few months to deliver can typically become outdated quite quickly. This is where online insight communities can help. At Join the Dots, the way we approach online insight communities is that we'll never just look at the data from one research project in isolation. But we believe for the findings to have relevance and to have longevity with our clients, we need to make use of the wider context information and existing knowledge and people that we already have. So through consumer trends, working collaboratively with other agencies, and actually making the most of who we've got and what knowledge we've got, all delivered in a timely manner, this all contributes to the philosophy that we share with Unilever in terms of getting great insight. But as we've seen already, that's not where the battle ends. We've got to make sure that this great insight sticks with stakeholders. And how do we do this? Well, yeah, it's about engaging deliverables and impactful debriefs. It's about banning that bar chart up for presentations to make sure that our findings are engaging and they're story-led. But critically for us, we feel that it's about embedding those research findings in what's happening in the wider context and what's happening in Unilever's world to make sure that those findings resonate with stakeholders. So we're working closely with those stakeholders and with those partners from Unilever. And we're continually learning through the ongoing pattern of research that's going through our community, constantly building on challenging our information and our knowledge about consumers. And in this way, it's almost cyclical. Through the ongoing research that runs through an online community, we're getting closer to those consumers. We're continually building on and updating our knowledge. So we're able to spot existing trends in our data, but we're also starting to see the emergence of new trends in our data as well. And this ability to constantly update our thinking means that we have a really good sense of the current picture of consumer behaviour, but we're actually able to start thinking about what that future consumer behaviour looks like as well. So at this point, I want to introduce the, hopefully it'll work, At Home with Unilever community panel. So we run a community panel for Unilever. That is 26,000 strong community panel of consumers where we have around 3 to 4 consumer engagements with them every single week. So we're getting really close to these guys. And having an untapped pool of consumers means that we're continually listening to what they're telling us, which means we can continually update and modify our knowledge about these consumers. What's important for us about having this channel of consumers is that we can really start to identify when a trend really is a trend and not just a fad. Because for the work we do for Unilever, it's important that we're looking at the mass macro market trends and not something that's here one day, gone the next. Let's take provenance as an example. So early last year, off the back of the horse meat scandal, I was in a multi-agency workshop with Unilever, and we were discussing how provenance is big and we need to react. And at the time, it felt really, really true because consumers were telling us in our community that they're tired of the faceless, invisible nature of the supply chain, and they were really craving more of a connection with what they bought. But roll on a few months later, and actually provenance really wasn't top of mind for consumers. Yes, we were still seeing words like local and British in the dialogue that we were having, but the strength of feeling around where their food had come from had seemed to die down a bit. And that's important because it made us reassess the importance and the weight of provenance in the work that we did for Unilever. Having the community really allows us to apply more of a consumer lens to trends that we see in various pieces of market research. And we are starting to see consumers be more sceptical in general, particularly about the way things like provenance are communicated in marketing. Now, a great example of this is artisan produce. So in the UK, artisan quickly became co-opted by big brands and supermarkets. It's a way of premiumising products. But consumers in our community were telling us that they were quickly wisening up to this. And they were no longer using artisan as a heuristic for good quality, handcrafted food. Actually, they were more sceptical, and they did see it for what it was. Now, that's not to say that there isn't a great need for consumers for great quality, great tasting produce that hasn't been overproduced. It's just that artisan just didn't have the same impact that it once did. But actually what we're starting to see in the work we do for Unilever, in contrast to this, is the emergence of a new trend that we've coined called return to the senses. And this is very much about having real, literal experiences. Because we're all so highly connected in a digital world and a lot of our interactions mediated through screens, we're finding that in our community this is starting to create a bit of a backlash. So when consumers are offline, they're craving real sensory experiences. They want to see things, feel things, touch things, taste things. In the case of food, it's about the simple pleasure of enjoying something really tasty. Just to give you a really extreme example of this, I don't know if any of you have come across the concept of dining in the dark. So there's a restaurant in London called Dans la Nuit, and they offer their customers the experience of dining in complete darkness, so they can make complete benefit of their senses, their taste and their smells when they're enjoying their meal. Bit of an extreme example, but it just gives you an idea of where this trend is going. But actually, let's bring it back to FMCG and Unilever. And we find that actually there are opportunities for brands to simply engage with some of these consumer trends. So take something as everyday as laundry. Unilever and other competitors, in fact, have launched a range of fabric conditioners called super sensorial fabric conditioners, where they've really upped the fragrance credentials, bringing new, exotic, exciting fragrances to the market. And these have had really great success. And that's probably in part due to the fact that it's just bringing this little bit of sensory experience to the everyday purchase. Even Unilever's retail partners are getting involved in this as well. So here's an example of a UK campaign that Tesco ran fairly recently called Love Every Mouthful. Now, when we start looking at what consumers have been telling us, yes, there is still this ingrained need for value for money in their purchases, born out of a period of recession. But at the same time, consumers are getting sick and tired of being bombarded with the sheer functionality of offers, price cuts, promotions. And Tesco have taken advantage of this by promoting their company via the sheer enjoyment and pleasure of eating good, honest, simple food. It's been really beneficial having this community because it's really helped us apply different lenses to the way that we think about consumers. And one final example of this really is in the way we perceive consumers interacting in a digital world. So typically, living in a digital world for consumers used to mean collecting friends, collecting followers, also that they could feel part of something bigger. But actually what we're starting to see now in the community is a movement towards fewer, better engaged, more meaningful social relationships. So what does this mean for brands? Well, it means finding brands that can easily connect meaningfully with consumers. It's not about buying fans and buying followers. It's about making those connections. And Unilever have done this with their UK campaign for PG Tips, the tea brand, which is all based around the premise of getting people together over a cup of tea. It was called the Great Get Together. Now, obviously, you know as Brits love a cup of tea, but actually it turns out the community see a real synergy between tea drinking and social interactions, bringing people together. So it's an example of how picking a relevant brand can really tap into these trends. So having the community has really enabled us to generate, explore, and push our thinking in these areas. So watch this space, because we're evolving our thinking all the time so that we can make sure we give Unilever the most up-to-date opinions on their brands and their markets and their consumers. But it doesn't really stop there, and there's just one thing I want to kind of finish on, really. We want to really challenge the silos that we work in as agencies. As Alex has mentioned already, we just need to be better at bringing together the pieces of the puzzle. So we want to collaborate, we want to share our knowledge and bring our relative strengths to the table to help Unilever contribute to that bigger picture. And collaboration makes us smarter as well. It makes us work more efficiently. We help Unilever to shape briefs by working with other agencies. And sometimes we find that we don't even need to do the primary research for Unilever, because from all the insights generated ongoing from the community, from the great sources we have around consumer context, market trends, and from some of the hard data Unilever have on consumption, sales and media, we found that actually we already have the answer. We just needed to bring it all together by working together. So by collaborating, we're not overlapping, we're not duplicating, and ultimately we're working across different agencies, across different data sources and methodologies, ultimately to get to that one question, one answer philosophy that Unilever advocate. Thank you.